The story for The Lost World went through many changes. Um, when it first started, it was titled Enika, and the first several trailers called it Enika as well. And the reason behind that was because it was about the actual Enika. The Jaller, Holly, Kongu, Nuparu, Matoro, and Huki all becoming the Toa Enika and battling the Paraka. That was my original intent for the third film. I never actually owned the Enika models or the Paraka models though, so logistically, in terms of budget, which I had like no budget, the Enika story had to go. There was a small mention, or not necessarily a mention, but a hint at the Enika storyline at the end of Masks of Power. Takua says, "I have a feeling that a new batch of Toa will be coming along someday soon." That was the hint at the Enika. Unfortunately, that never actually happened. The reason I really picked the Toa Nuva story is because I had gotten some comments on some of my videos pointing out that the Toa Nuva never died in the original Bionicle stories. At the time I made Fallen Order, I did not know any of the Bionicle storylines beyond the 2006 storyline, and even then I only knew like the basics of the 2006 storyline where the Enika become the Toa. Maybe as a way of kind of backtracking and covering my tracks a little bit, I decided to make the third one about the Toa Nuva instead of the Toa Enika. I figured, how I killed all the Toa Nuva off except for Takua. How can I bring them all back? And how can I especially bring back Takua, because at the end of at the end of the second one, Takua became a Turaga. So how could I bring the Toa Nuva back from the dead, and Takua, how could I bring him back to being a Toa? That one stumped me for a while. First I thought about doing it like a prequel before they died, but that didn't really go anywhere, and what I eventually settled on was the Mask of Time. That the Mask of Time could play a bigger role in the third one, and it actually proved to be a good way of tying the first one into the third one, with the Toa being dead and then brought back to life, and it brings back those unpleasant memories of how they had killed each other. When the Piraka storyline got dropped, I was kind of at odds at who I should pick for the villain of the third movie. It settled on Akmu, but I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to convey him being so evil, because in the first one we had a Matoran as the main villain, and that was one thing. The second one took it to the next step. You had an evil Toa and two mutated followers, and the third one, you go back to Matoran. That one, it didn't seem logical to me, and then the answer just sort of like came to me, and it was kind of embarrassing that I didn't think of it right away. If you're bringing the Toa back to the Mask of Time, you could also bring Makuta back, and that can be the reason they need to bring the Toa Nuva back. And it could still have Akmu in it, and it would all work. Another thing that was significantly different in the first draft of The Lost World with the Toa Nuva storyline was that there were other characters going to be involved in the script, and the most prominent of these characters who was in the first draft but then never actually made it to the film was Maku. She was part of the original Chronicler's company in the 2001 storyline, and she was also a key player in the Borak invasion of Gakoro in the 2002 storyline, and was also Hyuki's love interest. So I was going to bring her into this film, and there was actually one scene and a half of another scene that I shot in the early stages of production before the script was finished that had Maku in it, and then also one of the scenes, the half-finished one, had the character Tepu in it, and Tepu again was a key player in 2001 and 2002 storylines. In the end, both of them got dropped. I was starting to realize I had way too many characters and I couldn't keep up with them. In the earlier stages, I had been filming it and still writing the script, which is that's not really a smart thing to do, to film before you have a final script. One thing that happened when I started filming and still writing was that Sam's Comics, the movie, got picked up by the MCC Film Club. And I apologize that I keep bringing up Sam's Comics in these Chronicles of the Chronicler making of videos, but Lost World was what I call a major project. I have two categories. I have a regular project and a major project. Regular projects are about 90% of all the videos that I do, and then major projects are the ones that I spend a whole lot of time on. When comics got picked up, production for Lost World was supposed to go and restart in September. However, comics went way over schedule and wasn't finished filming until November, so then Lost World was going to restart in December, but then I never really restarted it until about April. So from March 2011 to April 2012, Lost World was just shut down basically. There's a few things that I had done here and there, but none of it was ever real serious work during production for comics. You see, one of the things I really enjoy about movies is the stories. I don't really care if all these movies have such big special effects and all these great action sequences and explosions and everything like that. That actually kind of turns me off if they have a whole lot of it and the movie's focused around all the special effects and things like that. That really I don't care for. Emphasis on character is something that I try to do in my movies. Especially in Sam's Comics, I try to introduce all these characters and have them have a kind of character arc in the story, but I focused on a few of them, and unfortunately they didn't all come through. Particularly, I had made story arcs for the characters Kenzie and Molly, the two sisters who are always at odds with each other, and then I had also done an extensive story arc for the character Lindsay, who unfortunately almost her entire point in this her entire point in the script got dropped. When it got right down to it, the storyline of those characters didn't advance the central storyline as much. They were just subplots that happened simultaneously with the actual film, and that's something that I think really I had to take into consideration when writing the script for Lost World. I was trying to go the extra step and develop each of the characters in the script, like give Mitoro a backstory, Niparu a backstory, Kongu a backstory, Altair a backstory. All the characters were going to have backstories and character arcs for the most part. Not all of them had character arcs, but they were going to have more detail put into them. And as I was writing, I was kind of realizing that the script was beginning to get out of hand. It was more character-driven and less story-driven, and the story was beginning to suffer from the amount of focus on all the characters. So I had to really just pull it apart and decide who were the most important characters to develop out of all the characters. Out of the 6 Toa, I decided it was more important to develop Tahu, Gali, Onua, and Pohatu, and Altair needed a little bit of development. But even then, in the final film, Altair's character is still kind of vague. Pacing became an issue with his character because it was a more serious story, and his character was written to be a little more comedic. That was really kind of clashing with the seriousness of the story in certain scenes, and I had to tone him down quite a bit. Jala's death scene in the film really changed as the script went on, and so did Mitoro's. In the original script, Mitoro wasn't going to die, it was Maku who was going to die. Jala's death changed quite a bit because the original cause of his death was going to be falling from a height, which he does in the film, and then he lands in a Krata pit, which Krata are like giant poisonous slugs that power the rock sheath, and there was going to be a whole lot of them. Holly and Mitoro would rescue him, but he would still be bitten by one of the Krata, and he was going to die anyway. And Takua is about to be killed by another Rakshi, and Jalar jumps in front of it and is stabbed by the Rakshi instead of Takua. and you would still have that scene with Takua holding Jollar as Jollar's dying. In the end, the credit got cut from the script, so it just had to be Jollar dying from a rock sheet. And that was going to be the end of the script. Makuta would come, Jollar would die, and they would kill Makuta, and that was the end. I was going to try to end it on a bittersweet note by killing off Jollar and Maku, later Jollar and Matoro. But when it came right down to it, with all the Mask of Time, and the concept of the Mask of Time really just lent itself to having some sort of serious time alteration at the end. The only way I could really do it now, I have to bring Jollar and Matoro and the Fallen Toa back. So that's how the ending came, and I think it was a much better ending. Now comes the really big question. Will there be a fourth Chronicles of the Chronicler film? The answer is no. I have made 3 of them. They took forever to make, especially this third one. And I feel like the ending of this third one really brings the series to a close, and there doesn't need to be a fourth one. Another thing I think is kind of failing in Hollywood nowadays is that movie series don't know how to end. Like, you could have ended Pirates of the Caribbean with the third movie, but instead they made a fourth movie which wasn't as good. This is the end of Chronicles of the Chroniclers. That doesn't mean it's the end forever. It's like Holly says at the end, it's up to you to make new stories. There's a whole lot of other good stop-motion Bionicle films out there on YouTube. This story is done, but the big picture is still out there. Forgive me if I keep looking down. I have a list of things I need to talk about in this video. You recovered well from...
I was like,
you recovered well.